Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today's news takes us across borders but also speaks directly to what's happening here in South Africa. Zimbabwe's ruling party has spoken out strongly against Operation Dudula, accusing the movement of being xenophobic and unfair towards migrants. This is a sensitive and heated issue that affects communities on both sides of the border. Make sure to listen till the end to hear the sources of this news and verify it for yourself. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any updates on matters that are shaping South Africa and the region. Now, let's unpack what's going on. Operation Dudula is a movement that started in South Africa a few years ago, led by activists who say they are standing up for locals. The group claims that migrants, especially those without proper documentation, are taking jobs, running businesses illegally, and putting strain on health care and housing services. Over time, their campaigns have gained both supporters and critics. Supporters argue that Dudula is simply highlighting the frustration of South Africans who feel left out of the economy. Critics, however, say the movement often fuels hostility against foreigners and ends up creating division and violence. Recently, Zimbabwe's ruling party, ZANU-PF, decided to publicly condemn Operation Dudula. Officials from the party called it xenophobic, saying that it unfairly targets Zimbabweans who are living and working in South Africa. According to them, many Zimbabweans have been forced to cross into South Africa not because they want to, but because of economic hardship back home. They argue that attacking migrants or driving them out won't solve South Africa's unemployment crisis, and instead will damage the historic ties between the two nations. The words coming from Zimbabwe are not light. Party leaders accused Operation Dudula of spreading hatred and turning poor people against one another, rather than focusing on those in power or systemic issues that drive poverty and unemployment. They also reminded South Africans of how Zimbabwe once hosted many South African exiles during apartheid, saying that solidarity between the two nations should not be forgotten. On the South African side, the reaction has been mixed. Operation Dudula leaders say they are not xenophobic, but rather patriotic. They argue that when they ask for South Africans to be prioritized in jobs and housing, it is not about hatred but about survival. They point to high unemployment rates, especially among young people, and say the government has failed to manage borders and enforce laws properly. Community members are split. Some South Africans openly support Dudula's campaigns, saying they feel their voices are finally being heard. Others worry that the rhetoric escalates into violence and that foreign nationals become easy scapegoats for deeper problems like corruption, poor service delivery, and lack of opportunities. For Zimbabwe, this is more than just about words. Millions of its citizens live and work in South Africa. They send money back home to support families, which has become a lifeline for many. Any move that threatens their ability to work or live peacefully in South Africa is seen as a direct attack on Zimbabwean households and even its struggling economy. The issue also shines a light on the broader migration challenges in the region. South Africa, being the most industrialized country on the continent, attracts migrants from across Africa. People come from as far as Malawi, Nigeria, Somalia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, seeking opportunities. This creates pressure on local resources but also sparks tensions in communities where unemployment and poverty are already high. Political analysts warn that if movements like Operation Dudula grow unchecked, it could damage South Africa's image globally, strain relations with neighboring countries, and even lead to retaliatory measures. Imagine a scenario where other countries start targeting South Africans living abroad in response. That could spark a cycle of hostility that benefits no one. At the same time, it's also clear that ignoring the frustrations of South Africans is not an option either. With youth unemployment over 60%, many people are genuinely desperate. Politicians have often used migrants as a convenient excuse or talking point, but communities are now acting out those frustrations on the ground. That makes the situation volatile and very difficult to manage. ZANU-PF's strong condemnation is therefore a warning. They want the South African government to take a stand and ensure that foreign nationals are protected. They are also urging leaders to address the root causes of migration through better cooperation and development between the two nations. But whether South Africa's government will respond in a way that satisfies both locals and neighbors remains to be seen. For ordinary people, the daily reality is much more personal. In Johannesburg, Pretoria, Durban, and Cape Town, many Zimbabweans run spaza shops, work in restaurants, or do domestic work. Some South Africans see them as hard-working neighbors, while others see them as competitors. And when movements like Dudula organize marches or raids, the fear spreads quickly through migrant communities. Many close shops, stay indoors, or even send children away for safety. One Zimbabwean shopkeeper recently said that living in South Africa feels like walking on eggshells. You never know when a group might target your business or demand to see your papers. Another South African resident, however, argued that if the government did its job and enforced immigration laws properly, communities wouldn't have to take matters into their own hands. That shows just how differently people view the same situation. This back and forth between Operation Dudula and Zimbabwe's ruling party raises bigger questions about how South Africa manages migration and how neighboring countries address the root problems that push people to leave in the first place. Until those questions are answered, tensions will remain. Before I wrap up, if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so now so you don't miss any updates. And remember, always watch until the end to hear the sources so you can double-check the information for yourself. On a lighter note, some South Africans online have joked that if Dudula and Zimbabwe's ruling party sat down at the same table, they'd probably just argue over who gets the last piece of chicken. It's humor in the middle of tension, but it shows that even in tough discussions, people here still find a way to laugh. Another person said maybe if politicians worked as hard as Dudula does walking around townships, unemployment might actually go down. Sometimes the jokes write themselves. All images used are for illustration purposes only. Sources: SABC News, News 24, The Herald Zimbabwe, Daily Maverick.